Chasing Giants with Don Higgins and Terry Peer. Brought to you by Osseo Camo, nature's most lethal camouflage. Follow along as Don and Terry discuss the techniques, strategies, and dedication needed to harvest one of God's most amazing creations, world-class whitetails.
Well, hey everyone, welcome to the Chasing Giants podcast, episode 239 with Don Higgins. I'm Terry Peer. We are filming late, and this is going to be a late upload as we talked about last week. I just returned from Chicago, and warning to everyone, I got sick on the trip. The busy city of Chicago did me in. Too many people, too many germs, and you're all going to have to put up with me a little bit tonight. Don's going to pull most of the weight when it comes to talking. So you ready for this, man?
I better be. I'm not much of a talker, never have been, and you do a great job prodding me along and keeping me moving. So there may be some points in here where there's some blank spaces where nobody's saying anything. We'll make the best of it.
I will do my best not to make it miserable for everyone listening or watching. I apologize, but we're going to get this thing done. We don't want to skip a week just because I feel bad. So saying that, like I mentioned, we're filming late on Sunday night. Usually this podcast already dropped about 12 hours ago, but we're filming late and it will probably upload on Monday morning. But there is also something else that happened on our YouTube channel today, and that was the first release of our new Chasing Giants, a Mission Whitetail series, which we want to bring attention to and obviously thank Real World and Osseo for basically funding this new kind of platform that we're doing. And Don, Joe's first video was good. Steve Shields did a great job as always. You know, the work he puts in and putting all that video footage together. People don't realize how hard that is, but yeah, good response so far from the people who've watched it.
Yeah, a lot of comments already come in, and if you guys listen and haven't seen it yet, go to the same YouTube channel where you can watch this podcast, Chasing Giants with Higgins Outdoors, and those web shows will be downloaded there on that channel. So you might want to subscribe, and then you'll get a notification every time one is dropped. But, you know, besides the podcast you can see there every week, now you're going to be able to see a web show as well. And we got a lot of great people that are going to be helping with that show. Besides myself and Joe Miles and Terry, we got Brandon Epperson and Wes Delks. We got Ty Miller. We got Brian Kraft, Chris Yates,
Josh Anderson,
Dan Pfeiffer, just a whole
Bobby
list.
Bobby Worthington.
Yeah, how'd I forget him? And Bobby. So there's going to be a lot of great content, and it's going to be really varied. So, you know, this week we seen a hunt. I'm not sure what's on the schedule for next week. I think it's another hunt of mine maybe, but besides just hunts, we're going to have educational stuff on land management, but also hunting tactics. You know, Bobby and basically everybody is going to be, you know, sharing some things that have worked for them. So just go subscribe because there's going to be something for everyone.
Yeah. You know, the one thing about what people talk about the hunting industry or the hunting community and people that are on the shows is that it's not relatable, or I could never do that. And I assure people, the team that we put together, you're going to end up seeing a 125-inch buck shot. You're going to end up seeing a 200-inch buck shot, and everything in between, with people with different goals and different phases of their hunting career. So we wanted to make this to where it just wasn't something that people couldn't relate to. We wanted someone to look at these videos and social media posts and say, hey, I can relate to that, or look at another one and say, that's what I aspire to be. And I don't think there's anything out there right now that gives you a perspective of both. We have people at all phases of where they're at with hunting career, hunting properties. So it's just going to be a good time. For people that don't understand how it's going to work, we're going to try to produce a daily reel that will go on YouTube, plus our new social media channels on Instagram and Facebook called Chasing Giants TV, where it's a daily check-in from somebody. There's a video that posts tomorrow with me on something as simple as organizing my Osseo backpack so I don't get all my little Debbies smashed in the bottom of the backpack when I throw my binoculars in. So stuff like that will be going on, very short videos every single day. We're going to try to bring that to you. And then there's a weekly longer video that's going to be Don, and Joe talking about more hunting strategy, property management, that kind of stuff. And then we'll release the full hunt videos, which Steve does a great job doing full production on that. So it's going to be a lot of constant contact. Again, the platforms, all of the hunt videos are going to be on our YouTube channel, Chasing Giants, but make sure you go to Instagram and Facebook and look up Chasing Giants TV on those and subscribe. We'll have a blast of content coming at you and hope you enjoy it.
And it's going to come from a wide geographic area. It's not going to be just in the Midwest. We got folks from the South. Joe's from South Carolina.
Josh hunts in Georgia.
Yeah, and clear out to the Plains states, Kansas.
Yep.
Just all over. So, besides the varied backgrounds that each of these folks bring, they're in different regions of the country. You're going to see Bobby hunting the big woods of East Tennessee where he lives, as well as other places he travels to. But you're going to get that Midwest hunting, in the farm country. You're going to get the Plains. You're going to get the South. So there's going to be something for everyone.
Yeah, I mean, to expand on that, you got Joe and Josh Anderson that will travel all over the country and hunt. They go bounce around all over the place, different places. Then you got Ty Miller, who's hunting his property, but it's a very small acreage property. Then you got us that are developing farms and habitat. So it's just, just a wide, just mix of people. And, the big news is opening weekend, 2 members of our team, Dan Pfeiffer, drove down from northern Indiana and last week filmed Brandon Epperson kill an absolute stud of a Kentucky buck on opening evening. And this is the 3rd year that Brandon has killed a velvet buck on opening weekend of Kentucky archery. And congratulations to Brandon. This thing is awesome. I'll put a picture here on the people watching for YouTube, but huge flyers coming off the back. He's got a history with the buck for a couple years. And he's figured out how to get it done in September in Kentucky, that's for sure.
And this is a very unique buck that he shot, as you'll see from these pictures. But you'll get to see that hunt. Yeah, watch Brandon shoot that buck as part of the Chasing Giants Mission Whitetail Series web show.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, we made a stir a couple weeks ago with our cell camera conversation. We're going to come back to that, but before we do, before the Osseo spot, let's talk a little bit about this EHD thing. And unfortunately, though, our worst fear is that the drought is spreading, and there's a lot of muck and mud, and you heard reports, and now EHD is breaking out again in Illinois. So talk a little bit about that.
Every day I'm getting new reports of EHD. Yesterday I got a report in my home county, actually close to Joe Johnson's home, which is not that far from me, probably 8 or so miles from my house. So it's here. My buddy Tim Heath up in Logan County, Illinois, has found several deer dead. Even had one on trail camera on video mode that you could tell he was sick as could be. And Tim killed some real giants, and he's beside himself as these deer are, succumbing to EHD just right and left. But Clay County, Illinois, Effingham County, Illinois, 2 that are not that far from me, reports in those counties. And just like every day, there's just somebody else sending me a picture of a dead EHD deer. So it's way more widespread than what we thought even just a week ago. And there's no relief in sight. The next 10-day forecast, there's no rain whatsoever. High temperatures. What we need is a good rain of several inches, really, and we need a frost. And then that frost is not going to happen anytime soon. So this EHD is just going to continue to probably the outbreak is just going to continue to grow. And I'm getting worried. It's just getting closer and closer to home the more of these reports I hear. So just want everybody to be aware of that.
Well, I tell you, on one of the properties that I hunt in Illinois, our friend Kyle Harmon from Team Radical was doing some fall food plot work for me. He is a real blessing because he can run over there and take care of some stuff for me, so I don't have to drive the 4 hours up. And he sent me a text message and said, hey man, I don't know how to tell you this, but there's something that really stinks there at the farm. And I just so happened to be driving through about a week later, and it's back in the brush, and I didn't go searching back through it. There's nothing I can do. I'm not going to put intrusion on my property to go stomping up to see if there's a dead deer. But I'm just I'm on pins and needles waiting to see if I get trail camera pictures of what's there and what's not there. Because the worst thing comes to mind. Talk a little bit. We get these people that call us and say, "What can I do?" And I hate to say it, but you're too late in the year to do anything. Let's talk about EHD resistance and what deer are doing, and then we'll take a break to listen to our spot from Osseo.
Yeah, I've had a lot of questions about if there's anything we can do, and to be honest, there's not a whole lot. I don't think people totally understand the resistance that some deer have to EHD. So, in the South, EHD is very common. It's there every year, and every year a few deer die from it in the South. But in the South, it's been so prevalent over the years, it's there every year, that deer do survive it, a percentage, and when they survive, they have a resistance from that point on in their life. And they also pass that resistance on to the next generation, to their fawns. And then those fawns will pass on a little to their fawns. But the thing of it is, with each successive generation, that resistance becomes a little weaker. So a deer that actually had it has a lot more resistance than its offspring, and its offspring has more than its offspring. And by that continual presence of the EHD virus, there just continues to be resistance build up in that herd. Well, you get up into the northern areas, and we just don't have that because EHD is not near as common. And I remember when I was in the captive deer industry, a lot of guys in the South were bringing northern deer down to their breeding programs and wherever. Some of those southern states, Alabama, I know, brought a lot in. I don't remember. I think they did Texas too, and it might not have been live animals. It might have been through semen. They used semen from northern bucks to breed those does, and most of the time, those deer would just about always die. They couldn't take it. And then on the reverse side, I know that there were some breeders in the northern states that were using semen out of Texas bucks because those deer have some resistance to EHD, and they were doing that. So, just to help everyone understand the resistance, a deer or its predecessor had to have had EHD and survived. And I don't know what the survival rate is, but it's low. I know here in the Midwest, the survival rate's got to be less than 10%, probably less than 5%. So, 20 deer get EHD, 19 of them are going to die in the Midwest and in the northern states. The one that doesn't, it is going to be resistant, and it's going to pass on a little bit of resistance to its offspring. So, it seems like every decade or so we have a really bad outbreak. The last time was in 2012. We're 12 years removed from that. Now, we were really due for an outbreak, and, every one of us is holding our breath, just hoping, and it can be very isolated because you can have a farm that almost every deer is killed, and then you can go 2 or 3 miles down the road and there's not a single dead deer. It's real sporadic and real spotty. 2012 was when it was the most widespread, but every year there's a few outbreaks, at least some isolated outbreaks. This year is way worse than normal, with a lot more outbreaks in a lot more regions than what would be average. But there's going to be some survive. There's going to be areas that are not affected hardly whatsoever. And then there's going to be areas that are just almost decimated. And those areas that are almost decimated, I really feel for those folks, because I remember in 2012 when it happened here, we literally lost 75% of our deer in this area, maybe 80%. And it probably took a good 4 or 5 years to recover, and maybe even longer than that.
I don't think it's ever recovered the way it was, but there's other factors in that. But, it was bad for a few years. We didn't even come to Illinois. Yeah, I don't, folks, we sell food plot and nutrition supplements, and, people always accuse us of trying to sell snake oil. And the people that are calling us right now saying, what can we do? It all starts with nutrition and healthier herd. And that doesn't start when you get an outbreak around you. You got to do it early. The guys that are chasing it, are the guys that'll never make an impact on it. You gotta, as much as I hate to say it, you can try it, we'll sell it to you, but at the end of the day, if I'm being honest with somebody, this is a building of a nutritional program that is year round for those who can do it, and you can't just flip a switch when the neighbor calls you and says there's a dead deer.
Yeah, a good comparison would be, someone who takes a vitamin C tablets, to keep from getting sick, to keep from getting a cold. Well, you don't wait until you're sick and then you start popping vitamin C and thinking that's going to take care of the problem. You take, right. And you also don't, take a month's worth of vitamin C in one day, swallow the whole bottle and think that you're good. It's a continual process. And you take one vitamin C tablet every single day, and obviously then that can have some positive impact on your ability to ward off illnesses. But it's the same way with these deer. You can't just wait until they get EHD and think you're going to go, oh, now it's time. I'm going to go put something out there to help these deer. It's a commitment. Basically, it's a year-round commitment. If you got to be all in. Real World has the all in motto that you came up with about a year ago, Terry, that folks have seen our land management guide or website have seen that. You got to be all in. You don't just wait till there's a problem and then go all in. Go all in now and prevent the problem.
Well, the way I feel right now, and as annoying as what my voice and coughing and hacking is, I'm sure everybody listening would hope that I could take a couple vitamin C tablets and make it more bearable for all of us, but that's not how it works. Stay tuned. We're going to listen to a spot from Osseo and Joe Miles. Again, go to the Chasing Giants YouTube channel and see his Kentucky 10-point buck in the video that Steve produced on it. It's uploaded as of today, September 15th. Make sure you go watch it, and we'll be right back to talk about cell cameras a little bit more.
Osseo Gear has perfected one of the most innovative camo patterns on the market. The unique camo pattern designed to mimic the feather patterns of one of North America's greatest predators, the great horned owl. Combined with intuitive features, superior comfort, and ultra high quality fabrics give bow hunters the ultimate advantage. Osseo has outfitted over 10,000 bow hunters across the country with over 1,000 5-star reviews. Visit asiogear.com to check it out for yourself. Use code CHASINGGIANTS for 15% off.
Okay, Don, we kind of rocked a lot of people's bubble a little bit, and either people 100% agree with us or we're saying we're absolutely crazy a couple weeks ago with the cell camera, but you got some thoughts that have kind of sparked since we uploaded that, and you wanted to talk about it a little bit before we moved on the show.
Well, I'll tell you what, I didn't realize the influence that you and I have, and this podcast has, on the hunting industry, but after we posted and we only talked about the cell cam thing for what, about 3 minutes or 5 minutes?
Maybe a little bit more than that, I don't know.
It wasn't very long. I mean, we talked about cell cameras, but as far as deer detecting cell cameras, we only talked about that for just a few minutes. And man, all of a sudden, everybody and their brother's putting out a video on can deer detect cell cameras, and everybody's an expert and blah, blah, blah. And I got a lot of personal feedback from guys that have did different experiments. We're having a non-cell at a location and replacing it with a cell or vice versa, and seeing how it impacted the pictures they got of mature bucks. And I guess I need to clear things up a little bit, because I do think there's something to it. I'm not saying that the deer are picking up radio signals or anything like that, though. It may be a noise. I don't know what it is. So I'm just saying that in my observation, I get fewer mature buck pictures on a cell cam than I do on a non-cell cam. And I've got people telling me that I need to hang my cameras different. I need to get them up in the air, and I need to do it's the scent, the human scent, and blah, blah, blah. Well, the human scent is the same, whether it's a cell camera or a non-cell camera. Folks, I know how to hang cameras. I can get pictures of any buck on the property. I've been doing it for years. But there's something to the idea that it's harder to get a mature buck's picture on a cell cam than a non-cell. And I'm not saying I know what the reason is, but I do believe there's something to it. And the feedback that I got was probably at least 75% agreeing with me and maybe 25% disagreeing, and that's just a guess. but it was at least 75%, were also saying that their observations were similar.
Yeah, and I think we're the only ones that claim that we have no idea it's a perception or an idea that you have, but don't know any reason why or if it's true. But yeah, you're right. For the 2 weeks following it, I would have a link, so one of our friends would send us somebody else's. So it's a compliment. I really appreciate that people care enough to even watch an hour of our nonsense every week, much less continue that conversation onto another platform. That's pretty humbling, actually, because I don't think it's worth that too much talking about when you and I are venting about something every now and then, but it's kind of cool that people listen to us, and that's the good part of it.
Yeah, we try to have a positive impact on the industry. Sometimes we get pretty blunt with our statements. Sometimes we call things out that a lot of people would just let slide. But overall, we're trying to have a positive impact, not only on people's hunting success, but on their life in general. I wish if people are going to copy what we do, I wish they would copy the fact that we try to promote good family values and Christian values. Well, that's what we need more people copying. And I would be absolutely honored if they would copy that part. And not that I have any issues with them copying the other part. I just didn't ever realize the influence that we had with this podcast.
Well, speaking of that, we always try to use the platform for something good. My daughter texted me this morning. I was coming back from Chicago, and she sent me a text. They made a big announcement at her church today. She goes to the Southland Christian Church in Lexington, Kentucky, that they've partnered with a couple groups of people. And have you ever heard of the backpack programs where they send the food home for kids that, have to... So there's a lot of kids that don't have anything to eat at home. The only decent meal they have is at school. Mm-hmm. So they make a lot of churches make up backpacks with food in it and send it home with the kids. Well, a bunch of hunters are rallying together, and you can take your deer to a processing plant, and they're making protein sticks or like beef sticks for kids that don't need to be refrigerated. So if you're interested in that and you're in Kentucky, I don't want to be in the middle of it, but I told my daughter that's pretty cool. It's another thing where hunters are coming together to try to do something, bigger than just the sport of hunting. But go to Southland Christian Church, Lexington, Kentucky. There's all the information on the website. I told her that I would mention it on the podcast tonight, but that's what hunting community needs to be. It's about using your network and your people to make a difference, encourage somebody or do something good for somebody. That's what I want this thing to be about. That's the cool part of what we've got with this family of followers that listen to our nonsense every week.
Yeah, I mean, everything we do, we want to make a positive impact. And the older I get, the more I lean that direction. I'm working on a story right now. I'm not ready to start sharing it, but there may be an opportunity for us to take things to another level with a group of folks. And spent some time on a phone with a gentleman this week, and he's part of I'll just call him a group that, let's just say the government hasn't been too kind to over the years, and I'll leave it at that for now. But the whole conversation started. He knew about a big buck that a friend of mine had sent me a picture, and then I ended up, and he put the two of us together, and then this gentleman is in a position of influence, and we started talking about this big buck, and one thing led to another, and we were talking about our faith and this and that, and anyway, it's just crazy how doors open when you're trying to do the right thing. And there's going to be some haters coming bash you no matter what you do, but there's a lot of good people out there that we're trying to work with when we can, and just help other people out.
Yeah, so all you people that take little snippets of our podcast out of context and post a reel of it, pick one with Jesus next time, post that on there, do something good with your platform like we're trying to do with ours, and maybe you'll be blessed as much as Don and I have been. That's my challenge to everybody. You want to be blessed. Don taught me that when we first got into this thing. Try to be a blessing to others. So We'll talk real quick about your men's retreat you have coming up, and then we need to get to some questions because you got 6 ones that are going to take a little bit of dialogue tonight.
Yeah, so September 27th, 28th is the men's retreat from my church. Be at Sullivan, Illinois. I'm going to give you a phone number to call if you're interested. It'd be 217-254-1409. You're going to talk to Curtis. And guys, on Friday evening, there will be a ribeye supper. And then, around the campfire, we're going to have a speaker, Brent Henderson. You probably heard us talk about Brent before. He's got a ministry called Unleashed Men. He's got a podcast as well. Brent's going to be the speaker. And then the next morning, we'll have a breakfast there, and Brent will speak again. This is all outdoors. It's right on Lake Shelbyville. You can come and spend the weekend. You can go fishing on the lake. You can camp right there. Last year we had, I think, people from, I think it was 7 or 9 different states showed up. I hope to have that many again or more. Giving away a lot of door prizes, including my Matthews bow from a year ago, the lift that I had. So hope to see you there. Be a really informal atmosphere where I'll have a chance to visit with anybody that shows up. So again, give Curtis a call, 217-409, and I hope to see you there September 27th, 28th.
All right, sounds great. And then I made a phone call to Derek, or got an email from Derek. We're going to have a phone call this week, folks. I know we've talked about it several times on this podcast, but you need to, if you want to go to the Shipshewana show and you're in the hunting industry or have a product, you need to call now. He is running out of booth space and running out fast. So we got quite a bit of things going with this Chasing Giants family, and we're really excited. And that's just, that area up there in Shipshewana has been so special and so supportive of us for so many years. Make sure you're going and looking at the FAE Midwestern Sportsman's Classic to come up and spend the weekend with Don, myself, Joe Miles, and all of the other guys that were on the program last year, like Bobby Worthington, the Wenzel brothers, Al Foster, and it's going to be a blast. So are you ready to get to our first question, or do we have anything else we need to talk about?
No, I'm ready. We got some good questions this week, and probably going to take us some time to work through them. The first one comes from Rob Vandervenen from Ada, Michigan. It says, Don, as you may have heard, EHD is hitting certain parts of the Midwest hard this year, including my area in southwest Michigan. We are in a high deer density area where we practice strict QDM on around 2,400 acres. We've been very aggressively harvesting does for a few years to try to reduce our deer densities and have gotten it down to around 80 deer per square mile and roughly a 1-to-1 buck-to-doe ratio. Well, this year we had the perfect storm of EHD and estimate we've already lost about 70% of our herd with at least a month before a hard frost to kill the midge fly. You mentioned that your farm was hit hard in 2012 by EHD. I'm curious if you did anything to help your herd come back stronger and better. Obviously, there is now more food and nutrition for the deer remaining. Is there anything we can do to expedite the deer herd coming back to a healthy level? Well, Rob, the first thing I did was I stopped shooting does, and I did not shoot does for actually close to 10 years. I did not shoot a doe on the property. It's only been the last couple of years that I've shot does, and then only a couple. This year, the plan is, the way things sit right now, is I'm going to shoot a bunch of does. Hopefully EHD doesn't beat me to it and wipe it out indiscriminately, the whole herd. But I'm looking to shoot a bunch of does this year. But the thing is, this is a perfect opportunity. It's really hard to manage a big deer herd. I mean, I talk about culling bucks, and, I want to kill the worst ones in each age class. Well, when you're talking a big area with a lot of deer, it's really hard to do that. So since your deer herd's been knocked back, this is a chance for, you and your neighbors to really focus on shooting some of those lower end bucks. There's a good chance that you're not going to have a real nice buck for a few years simply because the age structure is not going to be there. It's almost like starting over with a bunch of fawns and yearlings, and it's going to take a few years for those deer to get growed up. But as they're growing up, if you guys will focus on shooting the lesser end of those bucks, and something I've really changed my mind about, and it's going to go totally against the grain of what we're all taught as hunters, and that is that culling has no impact on the genetics of a herd. Well, for the most part, I think that's accurate, but I do think there's situations where you can have an impact on the genetics, and I say that because I'm seeing it on my own farm. And again, my own farm is very unique, but, just in your situation, if you start culling hard now that the herd's been knocked way back, you're going to have a bigger impact than if you was trying to implement that same type of management approach with your herd, at the high levels that it was before EHD. So now's an opportunity for you to get on board, sacrifice these first few years as the herd comes back, but target those bucks that don't carry the kind of racks that you would really like to see down the road. The ones that are nice, allow them to get to 5-6 years old. Let them do some breeding. Let them, grow and safe. And you should be protecting those bucks that have 10 or more points as, 2-year-olds, the way you would be protecting a button buck. Let
Right.
those bucks get some age on them. And the other thing is, now your doe herd's been knocked back. Now you're in a lot better position to keep it at a manageable level. Don't get it to the point where you need to go out and shoot 50 or 100 does every year. Stay on it now and, manage that doe herd just like you're going to manage the buck herd, and keep your numbers in check, and then try to influence which bucks make it to the older age classes.
Don, this might be the most crazy question I've ever asked you on the show, and this is just my lack of knowledge, and I don't know if this is true or not. Every time we see these pictures of this mass carnage of EHD outbreaks, where we got deer laying in the water or, dead deer, I don't recall ever seeing fawns in those pictures. Does EHD kill fawns as much as they do older animals, or am I just people don't take pictures of the fawns? I don't know if I've ever seen in all those pictures a dead doe with fawns dead around her or dead fawns.
Well, it will kill fawns just as readily as it will a bigger, older deer. But the thing of it is that this is something I learned from the captive deer side of things. I had those deer for 20, 25 years, and I learned so much from that experience that I've carried over to the management of my property. But the thing of it, even in the pens, the ones that die are the bigger, older bucks, and it just kind of works its way down. As the body size of the deer gets smaller, the percentage of those deer that die from EHD becomes less. And the reason for it, here's the interesting thing, is that midge gnat that carries the EHD virus, it's got to bite that deer to spread that. Well, that midge gnat goes inside the nostril of the deer, and that's where it bites it. And a bigger deer has a bigger nostril, and it makes it easier for that midge gnat to get in, where a smaller fawn has a much smaller nostril, and those midge gnats don't get in there and bite that deer and give it the EHD virus, which will end up making it sick and probably killing it. So that's a spot-on observation, because it does affect bigger, older deer. Most of the deer that you see pictures of anyway are big bucks, older bucks, and that's because of that bigger nostril.
Maybe you were sitting there talking, and I was thinking about all the pictures here in the last, especially week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks that I've seen where people have been taking pictures of this carnage where they find dead deer. I know a couple weeks ago, one of the groups in Indiana, the people were going on a kayak trip, and they said it stunk so bad there were so many dead deer. They had all these pictures from the kayak trip. I didn't see one of those pictures with a fawn in it. So like I said, it's lack of experience for me. I was just curious. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's interesting. All right, I'll put the next question up for you to start with it.
This one comes from Michael Young from Louisville, Kentucky. He says, thanks for the great podcast, guys. My question is regard to the numerous neighbor issues that will surely happen across the country this year due to deer hunting. Many disputes will take place over things like people hunting too close to property lines, dogs running loose on neighbors' land, jealousy over someone shooting someone else's target buck, etc. How do you guys deal with neighbor issues like these? Maybe your advice can prevent a few disputes and save some neighbor relations. Well, actually, I've got really good neighbors. I had one neighbor that was borderline. He wouldn't keep his dogs home, allowed them to run free. And fortunately, I guess for him and me both, he decided to move recently. So the neighbors that I have at this point are fantastic neighbors, so I don't have to worry about that. The other thing about my neighbors is my neighbors understand that I make my living from these deer, and they are very understanding about that, and they are very willing to help me. And on the other hand, I understand that most of my neighbors are farmers, and I'm looking out for their best interests as well. I'll help them any way I can, whatever they might need. They may need to, who knows, go across my property for some reason.
I'll talk about one. There's an example of somebody's ag field that runs a drain tile across your property that goes into the creek that had a problem with it, and it wasn't draining his field, and you went in and fixed the tile on your property to help him out. Yeah. So, I mean, that's a perfect example of you be the good neighbor. Start with that. But it does happen where you get so much you can't be as nice if they're not willing to work with you.
Yeah, and I had an issue just this week. Anybody that followed me on social media might have seen a picture of a truck I posted asking, who is this truck? Well, it turned out one of my neighbors knew who it was, and he told me, he says, I've taken care of this problem. It won't happen again. And I didn't need to call the law or anything. That's a perfect example of a neighbor looking out for me just the same as I will look out for them at every opportunity. And I think when it comes to deer hunting, and again, my property lays out a little bit different than most deer hunting properties. So I get it. I think a lot of it comes down to lack of communication between two neighbors. A lot of this stuff can be prevented beforehand by just talking to your neighbor. And, I will let any neighbor come onto my place and track a deer. In fact, I will go with them and I will help them recover any deer that's shot and runs onto my place. I don't want somebody else's deer. If they've got a reason they need to be on my property, absolutely, I will roll out the red carpet and say, have at it. I'm not going to be a jerk because I realize that they're trying to make a living in a different way than I am, or maybe they've got some other reason to be on my place. Maybe they've got livestock that's running loose and they need help corralling it or chasing it down or whatever. I'm going to do whatever I can. I think it really comes down to communication. I think a lot of these neighbor issues can be resolved before they ever happen. That's the key. You need to get on it now. Don't wait till you shoot a deer and it runs onto your neighbor. I mean, have that talk now and say, hey, I'm hunting here and I know you're hunting right next to me. There's a good chance either one of us could shoot a deer that runs onto the other. Let's come to an agreement now before it happens. Otherwise, the guy that has it happen to him first, he's going to be in a pretty tough spot when he goes to that neighbor, and that neighbor is, if he's not already said yes, then it's going to be a whole lot easier for him to say, no, stay off, you can't recover your deer. So have those conversations before it becomes an issue would be my best suggestion.
And you're always going to have people hunt property lines. You're always going to have people, shoot your buck. Well, to spin this a little bit different, as season comes, one of my kind of pet peeves that I see on social media is when somebody posts a picture of a buck and people just criticize whatever they are. I got two problems with that. Number one, don't try to oversell it. If you shot a buck and you're going to post it, don't make up a story to try to overcome why you shot it and sell it as something it's not. The second thing is, if you ain't got nothing good to say, don't say it. Just say congratulations or just move on. This industry, and community, we talk about it all the time. If you're tearing somebody else down for your promotion or to put yourself in the spotlight, that's not what put us in this situation that we're in today. That's not what's made so many friendships across the country is drawing attention to ourselves by harming somebody else. So we're not perfect. We've maybe said comments in the past that weren't too pleasant about other people. We try to do our best, but overall, try to do it the right way. Work with your neighbor. But yeah, I'm dealing with the same thing as you are right now. I got a ladder stand facing my hillside on the property line, and made a phone call and say I don't this isn't going to work because the only place you can shoot is across the property line. So got to deal with it now.
Yeah. Try to head it off before it becomes a problem. Talk about it first, and then the day it becomes a problem, you know, you've already got that foundation set of how you're going to resolve it.
Yep. All right, next question.
This one comes from Chase Vandenboss from Merritt, Michigan. Says, "Hey, Don and Terry, I love the podcast and the information, tips, tricks, and life experiences you share with us. My question for you guys is there an ideal food plot size when it comes to how safe mature bucks feel when feeding in said plot? Second question is it better to have your plot closer to bedding with the thought that there is less area for the deer to travel and giving you a smaller area to set up to increase your chances on seeing the deer to harvest it?" Well, in regards to the size of the plot, I don't think the size of the plot is near as important as the hunting pressure around that plot. You know, I know a lot of people promote smaller plots thinking the bucks are more comfortable stepping out in a smaller plot, but I'll tell you what, you take a small plot where a guy sits in it 3 times a week and he never pays attention to the wind, and it's not going to take long. He's not going to see much there. And on the other hand, you can have a 10-acre plot that a deer can see from one end to the other. And I know there's guys that say you need to break them up and they need to be odd shaped and this and that. Well, maybe, but if it's a 10-acre plot that's just a big rectangle and there's hardly ever any hunting pressure there and the property is hunted correctly where there's no pressure being put on those deer, a deer will come right out into that plot. So we can get hung up on little technicalities like the size of the plot, the shape of the plot, how far that plot is from bedding cover, etc. To be honest, I like that plot not to be right against bedding cover. Now, a lot of times on my farm with the switchgrass and such, I don't have space to, have that transition zone, but it's a whole lot easier to hunt those deer in that transition zone than it is right on the plot for a couple reasons. One is when they get to that plot, they're on high alert and they're not moving very far or very fast, and the odds of them picking you out is a whole lot greater. If you're in that transition zone, those deer are moving. They're moving past you. So if you can have a transition zone between the bedding and the food with some sort of funnel in there that's funneling those deer down as they move from point A to point B, that's a way better situation because you know how sharp-eyed does are. You don't want to have does in front of your stand for an hour solid. Sooner or later, they're going to pick you out. If you've got a stand where those deer are passing by, where they're only in front of you for, 5 minutes or less, that gives you plenty of opportunity to shoot those deer, but yet then they move on. And then that also makes it a whole lot easier to get in and out of your stand. You got that stand on the edge of your food plot and shoot dark comes and you got 30 deer or whatever out there in front of you. It's hard to get out of there without busting all those deer. But if you're back in that transition zone, you can slip in and out a whole lot easier, and that stand is going to be good for a lot more hunts than one right there on the edge of the plot. So, no, I don't want those food plots right against the bedding cover for the most part.
I think people put too much thought into all of this kind of stuff without taking the access into account. They'll put all this work into all of these details and then have horrible access to get in and out of the stand. Chase, I don't know if this applies to you, but maybe it's another listener. Get your access to what's foolproof and then design your food plot toward your habitat around your access. And if that's on the edge of the food plot or if that's on a transition area or what the property gives you, put more time into your access and put in the stand and then develop your habitat to bring those deer past your stand that you have bulletproof access versus maybe starting with the questions that you're asking. Maybe that'll help somebody.
Yeah, and I've said before that a food plot should not only make the stands around the edge of that plot better, it should make the stands 100 yards away better.
Yep.
So, and in small properties, a food plot should make every stand on the property better, but that access is huge. You got to be able to get in and out without bumping deer. If you can do that, and then you can push those deer past that stand, you're setting yourself up for success.
Yep. Well, I'm getting the next question up. I want to remind everybody to stay tuned to the end of the podcast today for our Sunday night prayer time. We missed it last week because of my travel schedule, but we'll get back on track this week. And Dan Pfeiffer, who's also going to be part of the Chasing Giants TV and Mission Whitetail series, really good guy that we met through West Delks, but he's going to be doing it. So stay tuned after this episode and listen to the Sunday night prayer time this week. So don't miss out on that. Here's your next question.
This is the one I just had, right?
Well, I didn't switch it. Sorry.
This one comes from Aaron Miller from Fort Plain, New York. Says, Dear Don and Terry, what does the term rut funnel mean? How do you identify or create a rut funnel? Thank you both for taking time every week to put this podcast together. Well, Aaron, a rut funnel is a location where bucks, when they're cruising during the rut, are going to travel through. It's an area where that travel is funneled down. It's an area that during other times of the year, there's probably not going to be a whole lot of deer activity there. I think of like saddles in ridge country, maybe a bluff where deer traffic is funneled down. Think about it as when deer are covering a lot of territory, that there's going to be places where that deer traffic is going to be really narrowed down due to terrain features or whatever. That's a rut funnel. It's a spot that is not going to have a lot of deer activity typically, but during the rut, when those bucks are cruising, they're going to be coming through.
Yeah, it's actually a part of the story on this week's episode of Chasing Giants TV. Joe and Bobby Worthington set up and kind of found that rut funnel and then kind of tweaked it to make sure it pinched it down far enough to get a good shot. But the funny thing, looking back at the video this week that Joe and Bobby is, they said they walked a huge farm. I don't know if it was 1,000 or 1,200 acres or something like that. And of course, it's big property. We've never been there, but the ironic thing about it was Bobby said, I hope you got something different. Yeah. And so I thought that was quite interesting that Bobby chose a small property with an optimal rut funnel on it versus a big property. It just goes to show where his head is at and being able to go in and target and look at topography. A true woodsman. There's not many of those guys left.
Well, somebody commented under that video that he spent 3 or 4 hours on 1,100 acres. There's no way that there had to be something on that 1,100 acres. And I don't believe that at all, because Bobby is a master of reading that terrain, and he knows what a pinch point looks like in that type of terrain as well as anybody. And if there would have been something, he would have spotted it a quarter or half a mile away. And, you could have probably hunted that property and probably killed deer, but there just wasn't that classic pinch point that they were looking for.
All right. Here's question number 5.
This one comes from Jeremy Van Kirk from Iowa City, Iowa. It says, Don and Terry, your podcast is without question the best deer hunting podcast out there. It should be mandatory listening for anyone who hunts whitetails or manages a property for deer. Topics you guys cover and the depth of that coverage is beyond what anyone else is doing. Thank you, and keep it up, please. Well, thanks, Jeremy. My question is about your personal experiences and the people side of deer hunting. I know what an average hunter like myself goes through in terms of frustration regarding other hunters and their seemingly lack of respect for others. Seems like I spend as much time trying to outsmart other hunters as I do trying to outsmart deer. I would guess that with both of you, this issue must be so much worse. Can you reflect on some of the frustrating situations that you guys deal with and how you have dealt with them? I would guess that your notoriety comes with a few negatives, and you both probably have some great war stories. It would be interesting for us average Joes to hear what you guys deal with. Thank you. Well, Jeremy, I don't really have a war story, I guess. I can't think of one right off the top of my head. I have to think on it for just a second. But, I understand the frustration of the people side of this. For me personally, in the situation where Terry and I have gained a little bit of notoriety is, when we started this, I was able to keep up with every phone call, every text, every email that I got. And today, it's almost impossible for me to do that. And a lot of times if I do reply at all, it's really brief with like just a reply. Somebody may send me 2 or 3 paragraphs and I reply with one short sentence, and I feel bad about doing it. But there's people that don't get a reply at all, and I feel bad because I don't want anyone to think that their question or whatever is not important to me. It is. There's just simply not enough hours in the day. So that's one of the people things that I have trouble with today. Asking for permission is one. When I go knock on a door in my area today and ask for permission, sometimes it goes way beyond. I can even be out of state sometimes. And people just seem to know that if Don wants to hunt on a property, there's probably a big one in the area. And what happens a lot of times is I get denied permission for a place where I know nobody's hunting it. I just know there's nobody been hunting it. I've never seen any sign of a hunter for years in this certain location. I track down the landowner, ask for permission, and it just opens their eyes. And then the next thing you know, somebody's hunting out there, whether it's them or one of their family members or whatever. They're hunting the spot that I wanted. So it's like I have a hard time getting permission. All I'm doing is I'm telling these other people where to go hunt. And it seems like half the time I'm helping somebody else instead of myself. Some of the fake rumors that go around, that's kind of frustrating. And I guess that's just part of the territory, but it's really frustrating when someone says something that it's not true. Your friends know it's not true, but there's really no way to prove it's true or not. I mean, for example, somebody can say, Don's property is surrounded by a high fence. Well, anybody can come to my farm and see that's not true. But somebody says, Don turns loose captive deer on his farm. Now, how do you disprove that? I mean, yeah, I can swear up and down it didn't happen, but there's really no way to prove it, and so people are going to question that in their mind. But today I try to keep a low profile more than I ever have. There's properties that I hunt. I absolutely will not park my truck there. I'll have my wife drop me off in the dark, and I'm literally, she's not pulling over and I'm getting dressed and taking off. It's like she's hardly even putting the brakes on. I'm jumping out and rolling just so nobody sees us there, or I'm parking someplace else to throw people off. I even use reverse psychology. I'll park my truck somewhere, making people think I'm hunting there, and I'll jump on the Quiet Cat bike and I'll ride 3 miles away, literally 3 miles on a Quiet Cat bike to throw people off. Just, all kinds of situations like that, and people trying to get close to where I'm hunting. Well, if they can't get permission on the same property that I'm hunting, they want to hunt the fence, the property line right against it. So I've got to really work now to keep a low profile more than I ever did in the past. And I know I brought this on myself with, all my magazine articles, my books, my podcasts, and all this. But it does get kind of frustrating, the people side of things. But on the other hand, I've met a lot of great people. So just this week, I was mowing on my property, some access lanes and such, getting that done well ahead of season so that I don't have to go back when season's open. And my neighbor had a gentleman that was doing soil tests on his property, and I'm not going to mention names of this gentleman, but this guy literally that was doing the soil testing, he was not my neighbor, not even from real close in the area, but he knows about my property, listens to the podcast. He thinks enough of me that anytime he's going to be on that neighbor's farm taking soil tests, he texts me to make sure that it's going to be okay, that I'm not going to be sitting in a stand if it's hunting season, or if it's okay to come in this direction or whatever. And so there's a lot of really good people out there, too, that go out of their way to be accommodating. So, there's good and there's bad with every situation. The notoriety that Terry and I've got, it's opened a lot of doors. It's caused a few headaches, but it's opened a lot of doors as well. And I'm just going to choose to pay more attention to the positive that it brings than the negative, and wish everyone else the best.
I think that was the biggest adjustment as we started this podcast, and the people who've been with us from the beginning that we've had to get used to and adapt is the blessings far outweigh the burdens. And probably we did spend too much time focusing on the burdens very early on in the podcast, because we were new to it. We had never been in that situation where this stuff was being thrown at us, and I hope that we've grown over the years and gotten better to deal with it. But yeah, it's people suck, and we people find out where we're hunting, or it gets found out that we're the ones there versus somebody, just a random person, and then that has a whole nother chain of events. So yeah, we try to protect where we're hunting and not try to let people know exactly where we're at, and fly under the radar as much as we can, but still make content. But yeah, I think that's probably where you and I probably were unprepared for this journey that we got ourselves into. Is we focused a lot on the burden at the beginning, but man, 239 episodes in, our blessings are so far outweighing them.
Yeah, and I've never set out to be famous. I never set out to be a look at me type person. I've always been kind of quiet. I think because I've been quiet, I think people misunderstand that sometimes and think I'm stuck up or arrogant. And I really got to make an effort to, portray a different image to portray the correct image of what I really am. Because I'm just a simple country boy. God didn't make me any better than anyone else. I'm glad to visit with anybody about deer hunting or whatever. And it just kind of irritates me that some people want to spread the idea that I'm stuck up and arrogant or whatever, and that's not it at all. Just I'm typically a pretty quiet person. Ask anybody that went to school with me, and or has known me forever, and it's crazy that once you have a little success, people perceive you totally different.
You are definitely the God using a person that is uncomfortable to even talk in front of people, much less do devotions to thousands of people in a Sunday night prayer time, or get up and do, I'll call them their sermons. They're deer seminars, but they're sermons because they have a salvation message to it. So who would have ever thought you'd be up there preaching Jesus through the hunting community? But yeah, it's proud to call you a friend. And like I said, thanks to everybody who's put up with us as we've tried to grow in this thing. we try to do our best.
We have grown, though, because I remember when I first did the seminars, the first handful I did, this is not an exaggeration, I literally would not sleep for 6 weeks before the seminar. I would be thinking about what I'm going to say with each slide that I was going to show, and I'd be thinking, man, I'm going to look like an idiot, and I'd get up there, and I'd forget half what I wanted to say. And today I can get up there with 10 minutes notice, and I can just pull up one of my old presentations and roll with it. But it's taken a lot of years to get there, and literally I couldn't. When I started, I had trouble speaking in front of 3 people, let alone 300, and come a long way. But
look at you now. Your mama's proud.
Well, I think it's to be honest, the more I think about things like that, I think I wasn't ready, and God knew when I was ready, and He prepared me. And, today I'm ready to stand in front of a crowd if I need to. I still don't like to. I would much rather be by myself out in the middle of nowhere hunting deer, but if I have to, I will.
Yeah. All right. Well, while I was in Chicago this week, I had a couple people stop in the booth to say hi, and met a guy and a good friend of mine from Ohio, Adam Garrett. I told him I'd give him a shout out on the podcast this week. So, Adam, you're famous now, man. Go sell a machine. Last question of the night.
Last one comes from Tim Peachy from Flemingsburg, Kentucky. Says, hello, Don and Terry. Love your podcast. My question is about what you know about pawpaw trees, or if you've ever tried them on your farm. Growing up, my dad liked his fruit trees, and as long as I can remember, he's always had apples, peaches, etc. He just recently planted 2 pawpaw trees that were loaded with fruit for the first time this year. All the other fruit trees he always needed to spray insecticides and fungicides to have healthy fruit. Being pawpaws are native to North America, they are very bug and disease resistant. So if deer are attracted to pawpaw fruit, you think they might be another option? Thanks for considering this question. Tim, that's a great question. Pawpaws are, native here to the United States. Another name for pawpaws is the Indiana banana. And I don't remember how that name came about. Something about, I think, in one of the world wars, pawpaws became a staple food source for some of the folks, when times were tough. But anyway, I planted pawpaws on my farm. Where I planted them was when I planted them was in the early days when I was just starting to develop the farm, and I planted them in what is my sanctuary now. So I have no idea if they're producing fruit because I just don't go in there during that time of the year to see if there's fruit on them. I see now that I know what pawpaws look like, I notice pawpaws growing all the time. They like a really rich soil, river bottoms, for example. They're kind of an understory tree. They'll grow, in the understories. They don't need a lot of sunlight, but they do get a fruit on them. I don't even know how to describe that fruit. It's
like a dinosaur egg.
Yeah, there you go. It's kind of a weird shaped greenish fruit, and I've never eaten one, so I have no idea what they taste like. I don't know if there's any pests that affect the pawpaw. So, yeah, I mean, no reason why you shouldn't, but keep in mind that they need really rich soil, and they don't want full sunlight. You put them out in the full sunlight, they're not going to do near as well. They need some shade. That doesn't mean they need to be in shade, for the entire day, but they should be shaded at least part of the day. And deer do like them, no doubt about it.
Well, and I think some of the fears about planting apple trees from the old days were before a lot of the new ones that are available, like our Jay Gingrich has. Those things you don't have to spray. They've with the tree breeders that they have been working with, it's taken a lot of the kind of fuss and aggravation of growing apple trees if you're doing it for deer hunting out of the equation. So that's why we've really been talking a lot about apples, is because this new variety that Jay's selling, it's just phenomenal for a guy that doesn't know a lot about fruit trees. As long as you can keep that thing alive, keep the deer and rabbits from girdling it, and you can have a really good food source late in the year, but not have to worry about a lot of this disease stuff.
Yeah, when I was in Michigan there a week or so ago doing the seminar, and Andy Andreas, the apple breeder that works with Jay, was there doing a presentation as well. Folks, if you get an opportunity to see Andy's presentation anywhere, you ought to do it, because I was really impressed with the presentation that he did. He was actually getting into the DNA of some of these disease-resistant apples, and he was showing DNA slides and things like that. This is not just some guy that went out and threw 50 apple seeds in the garden and seen which ones grew the best. This guy has grown tens of thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of different apple trees, and goes so far as to do DNA testing for certain disease resistance genes in these apple trees. So if you're going to buy these trees from Gingrich, they come with some real science behind it. It's just not a marketing ploy. There is true science behind those trees.
Absolutely. Yeah, if you want to learn more about that, go to Gingrich Tree Farms. They have social media and a website. And I believe, boy, I'm going to speak out of turn here, I believe Andy is going to be at the FAE Midwestern Sportsman's Classic in February. I'm pretty sure about that, but we'll confirm that and put it on here. Last year, he did a phenomenal seminar. There was a bunch of people in there learning about all this stuff, so it's kind of cool.
Yeah, and there's a good chance Andy's going to be at another major show this winter. Actually, I'm supposed to talk with the promoter of that show tomorrow, and trying to get Andy in there because I was so impressed with what he did in Michigan last week.
Absolutely. All right, well, I'm going to go to bed. I'm sick. This thing's going to upload and render through the night, and it'll be uploaded on Monday. I appreciate everybody's patience with the late upload due to my travel schedule. But it also gives you a chance to watch Joe's hunt yesterday. So spread the word about that Chasing Giants TV on Instagram, Facebook, and then the hunt videos will be on the Chasing Giants YouTube channel. We want to spread the word, and we'll do our best to bring you a very diverse video series on this thing. I'm excited. Something for everybody.
It's going to be good. Hope you guys will check it out. God bless
and
everyone.
Stay tuned after Don signs us off here and for Dan Pfeiffer's Sunday night prayer time. Take us out, Don.
God bless everyone. Have a great week.
Hey everyone, Daniel Pfeiffer, and honored to be able to bring another message to you guys. Really today is something that I feel like God's laid on my heart really for many years, but it's really always seemed to be a passion of mine, and I'm not not totally sure where it comes from. To be honest with you, I'm not sure if maybe it's because I didn't grow up in a church home. Maybe it's just part of what, maybe it's part of what God put me on the earth for. But I do know it came to light specifically during my time at a Christian college. And before I dive into this, I truly want I don't want anything I'm about to say to be ill will towards the campus. I love the campus, the mission, the people, and I don't want to speak ill will at all. But there was some things that I recognized there that I see in the modern day church today. And really this is where the passion really started. From a young age, God really laid on my heart this mission and this connection to connect businesses to the church, and really also connect the church to our communities. And I remember getting on a soapbox during essentially new student orientation. I worked in leadership for several years at the school, and the mission and everything that I saw was it was very inward focused, right? And for me, it was getting on the soapbox and saying we have to get out of our box, out of our four walls, out of our concrete walls here on campus. And to me, it never really made a ton of sense, right? We're largely a Christian campus. Most kids are coming from Christian families. We spent 3 days going to chapel, 1 day to church. And if there was a ministry focus, it was on campus, prayer time on campus, and things all focused in that campus. And I want to be the first person to say, I am confident that God moved in those. I'm confident that there were value in those. And yet when I look at it, we're spending a ton of time and energy really just continually being in these walls. We were being still. And we weren't looking outside the four walls or outside the property. And a lot of times it was just we didn't want to get our hands dirty, right? I don't think it's intentional, but it's like, hey, well, we don't do that, right? And so it breaks my heart to hear these things. And so it was pretty recent. A friend of mine she has an organization in which she's trying to connect churches to some of these organizations within our community and try to be more of that syndicate, because we believe that there's a lot of great organizations, but there's not a lot of great communication. And so it breaks my heart as though she's been going around to all of these organizations that have great missions that are trying to help people and do the Lord's work, that as she was talking through and saying, how can we connect? How can we help connect churches? That one of the comments just grinded my gears, just to be totally honest. And it was that the organizations, this has come up multiple times, but one exact quote was that this organization, that churches have been the worst for volunteering rates. That to get churches to partner and to take action has actually been the worst out of churches than anywhere else, bar none. The church is more focused today inwardly on events, on children programming, on making it easy rather than focusing what is hard and what we are called to do. And at the end of the day, we were never called to be just inside the four walls of the church. That was never our call. Rather, we're getting comfortable inside of the four walls of the church, and as Christians, we're losing perspective of the community around us outside of our walls. And there's a lot of verses that I'll run through and I'll reference here, but for the sake of time, I'm not going to read all of them. But the story told in Luke 7:36 through 50, it also appears in other Gospels, Matthew and Mark. But in the story, a woman who is a sinner washes Jesus' feet with tears and anoints him with oil while he's eating at a Pharisee's house, right? And the Pharisee who had invited Jesus is actually shocked. and says that the woman's actions are not right, they shouldn't have been, that she is sinful, and that if Jesus were a prophet, he would have known who she was, right? And so he's using this as his aha. Don't you know she's sinful, she's hurting, she's dirty, she should have never been able to come and talk to you. And I see this in our church today. We've gotten comfortable by saying we want the church to be the spiritual hospital, where the sick and the weary and the hurting come, and yet the looks that we give are often saying otherwise. The actions that we are doing are often saying otherwise. Rather, we've become significantly more like a country club than a hospital, where we want no sick and no hurting to be coming to our hospital. Rather, we want it to be a country club with, whether it's politically, we want them to look like us, we want them to sound like us, and we want it to be easy. And as a culture, I don't see us getting better at this. And I'm going to be the first person to tell you, I'm not perfect here, right? It can be an inconvenience. It can be, we got time at work, we are all called to be different places, but as a church, we are literally called to be set apart, right? The word church comes from ecclesia, which literally means called out and set apart. And so at the end of the day, in ecclesia, if I pronounce it wrong, I apologize, I'm just going to go with it. But Jesus modeled where he would actually be willing and open to where the sick and the hurting can come to him. Now, in today's world, I don't really think that a lot of that is happening. I do think there's great organizations in which the sick and the hurting are coming to us, but we are legitimately called to go and make disciples, Matthew 28:19 and 20. We are called to go out of the four walls of the church, and that power is given to us by the Holy Spirit, and that we should do nothing out of selfish ambition, rather to go putting others above yourself, right? There's so many other verses that I could throw here. John 13:15, John 3:16, Luke 6:38, Acts 20:18. I mean, all of these are going to come to, we are being called to get outside of the four walls of the church. And if I may be so bold, if you are attending and only attending church services, but you're not tending to to God's business, you're not following in wholeheartedly Jesus. This is a gut check for me. This is something that, hey, if we are not going out and having the eyes of Christ, if we are not trying to serve, I'm not saying you're not saved. And I want to be abundantly clear. I'm not saying that you don't love Jesus. But I am saying we aren't picking up our cross and following him. It's time for us to get uncomfortable and serve others, frankly, as Christ served the church. And so as we continue to move forward, and it's time to get out of the four walls. We are not a country club. I get it. It's easier to be that way. But at the end of the day, it's our job to come to the church, to lock arms, to be filled up. It's about the 6 other days. It's about what are we doing in our workplace, about how are we coming along to help the sick and the injured and the widows. And I hope truly at the end of this, I am not someone who wants to bash anybody. I'm confident there's a lot of people doing these things as you listen to this. But for me and my heart, as I started to reflect on this, and when my friend came to me and shared with me where we're at as far as churches helping the organizations in our own community, that the volunteering rate was the worst from churches, we've got it messed up. It's the people out there. We are supposed to be carrying the message of Christ. And so to land this plane, we'll pray and end this. And my encouragement to everybody is to be bold, to act and to listen to that small voice and find where God's calling you to be. Father God, thank you for this time. Thank you for this platform to be able to speak your word, and that you use us to speak to your people. Father, we ask that we have a boldness, that our hearts are softened to be able to act and do your work. Father, give us the opportunities. Help us to see them. May our eyes be your eyes, and may our thoughts be your thoughts, and our actions your actions. Father, there's a lot of things going on in the world today. There's a lot of noise, there's a lot of uncertainty, but the one thing that's never changed is your faithfulness. Father, give us the courage and the boldness to go out and share that, and to see your kingdom come here on heaven as it is on earth. Father, we thank you for today. May your will be done. In Jesus' name.